Okay, so welcome everyone to our latest episode of our ITSS Verona member series. We are the China and Asia group, and tonight we are very excited to talk about North Korean affairs for the first time. And we are even more excited to introduce you and to meet our guest, former North Korean businessman Hyun-seung Lee. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. But
Yep.
before we jump in, welcome and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, right. Your pronunciation is good.
Thank you. Glad to hear that. Before we jump in, Suha, would you like to just make a brief introduction of our guest?
Yes, amazing. I'm so happy to have you here, Hyun-seung. And as a brief introduction of who Hyun-seung is, Hyun-seung Lee is a former DPRK businessman and chair of the Kim Il-sung Socialist Youth League branch based in Dalian, China. A series of purges by Kim Jong Un forced him and his entire family to defect in late 2014, making their way first to South Korea, then finally to the United States. After completing a Master of Public Administration degree at Columbia School of International and Public Affairs earlier this May, congratulations, by the way, Hyun-seung is now serving as a lead program strategist at the Global Peace Foundation based in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Suha.
Yeah, so no, such a pleasure to have you here. And we just wanted to open up with our first question, which is just given your experience living and growing up in North Korea, would you like to shed light on some of the most important aspects of the North Korean society that people from the outside world might often misunderstand or overlook?
Uh, I would say there are not many, but several misconceptions or like overlooked by the Westerners. But I want to talk about one common misconception that I can think of right now. So one misconception about North Korea is that the outside world often views the North Korean elite as enjoying a life of privilege, immense wealth, and countless benefits. However, based on my experience, the wealth they possess is actually very unstable and relatively small amount. Since private property is not officially recognized, even if they receive briberies and they cannot accumulate assets. So they often hold cash, but most of them end up being discovered by the state and face severe punishment. So while they might be able to spend money occasionally, they are under like constant surveillance, making it impossible for spend, large amount of money freely. For example, a friend of mine had a father who was bank president, and he lived abroad of a decade and accumulated a significant amount of money. Yet he was unable to spend most of his money because he was under severe surveillance, and he couldn't take his family, to the restaurant every week because, when you visit restaurant in North Korea, and especially high-ranking officials with the car, and the car numbers are, monitored and recorded. So, and later it will be reported to the, Workers' Party, and then he could be, punished because of his, wealth spending. So, the so-called privilege often allow them to live slightly better life than ordinary citizens, but are still far below the standard of the middle class life here. And they experience the same restrictions on freedom, and in some ways, they live under even more scrutiny. Yep, that would be my first answer.
Great. Thank you for sharing that with us. And we also know that you were part of the elite yourself and your family was prior to
Mhm.
defecting. And so, yeah, it's just incredibly insightful. And I think it also resonates with, the increasingly authoritarian regime in the political increasing political instability in North Korea, causing more and more elites to flee and just causing a power imbalance and just overall instability throughout the region. So thank you for that. And I'd
Right.
like to pass on the second question to Bosco.
Yeah, thank you, Suha. Yeah, so I guess like the outside world is really concerned about like the US election as well, because it's now the biggest election year. And like my question would be like Pyongyang's ambassador to the UN has been indicating that the US election outcome will have no effect on North Korea's willingness to negotiate its nuclear program. But meanwhile, there has been a high-level defector who recently suggested that Kim Jong Un found Trump to be more fit for negotiations. So I just wonder how much you think the upcoming US election will affect the relations between the US and also North Korea.
Thank you for your question. I believe North Korea's UN ambassador told the truth and delivered Kim Jong-un's message to the United Nations and the United States. So North Korea has repeatedly stated through North Korea's state newspaper, Rodong Sinmun, and even Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, made clear announcements. And then, some internal documents also revealed that the nuclear weapon is off the table, like it's not for negotiation. They have no intention giving them up, and no, they can they? Giving a nuclear weapon would be a massive blow to Kim Jong-un's leadership, because aside from the nuclear weapons and the ballistic missiles development, he has no significant accomplishment to show as a leader in North Korea. The economy has worsened compared to the period before his rule. And after the pandemic, some residents even say they are going through a second Adios March, which is late 1990s. We had a significant, hardship in North Korea. And they, like they are literally saying that it's kind of second Adios March. So in a sense, everything has reached its limit, and the regime is being sustained solely through isolation and ruled by fear. So as long as the regime, doesn't change, or they change their the plan or like policy, it's safe to say that there will be no denuclearization negotiations or any possibility of giving up nuclear weapons. And I think it's true that Kim Jong-un personally prefers Trump over Harris because he met President Trump several times already, and he likely views Trump's positive remarks about him as making Trump more like a suitable and negotiable partner. On the other hand, he probably thinks that Vice President Harris, much like the Biden administration, won't even pay attention to North Korea. So Kim Jong-un believes that Harris wouldn't meet with him to negotiate for anything. While Trump might feel more approachable to Kim Jong-un, the real issue is the term of the negotiation. And what would each side be willing to offer? And the moment Kim Jong-un gives up his nuclear weapons, his domestic leadership would crumble, and he could end up like Libya's Gaddafi, like an outcome he fears deeply. On the other hand, I think Trump is all about, sealing a deal, whatever it may be. So if Kim Jong-un has nothing to offer, and there would be no agreement. That said, Kim wouldn't give it to Trump's demand because he clearly knows that Trump is just a 4-year president, while he's a lifelong ruler. So Kim Jong-un understands very well the situation could change dramatically after 4 years. So I would say, regardless of who will be the office in November, Kim Jong-un won't take a bite of that.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how Kim Jong Un found Trump to be like a better person for negotiations, while like his democratic counterparts really hates to negotiate and discuss with Trump. And I will pass it to Sandra to continue to discuss North Korea's relations with the other countries.
Thank
Sure.
you, Bosco. And thank you so much. This has been fascinating so far. My question is focused on the China-North Korea relationship. Given North Korea's growing military cooperation with Russia, especially following Kim Jong Un's visit to Moscow, how do you perceive North Korea's current relationship with China? Are there signs of tension or rivalry between Pyongyang and Beijing in light of the strengthened DPRK-Russia relationship?
That's a fascinating question. Um, how do I start? So, from the very beginning of Kim Jong Un's rule, he has wanted closer ties with Russia. In reality, the relationship between Xi Jinping and Kim Jong Un did not look promising from the outset. After Xi Jinping officially became Chinese leader in March 2013, breaking long-standing diplomatic protocol between China and North Korea. Normally, Chinese leader would either visit North Korea first or invite North Korean leader to China. But this unprecedented event left Kim Jong Un feeling a strong sense of hostile feeling towards Xi Jinping. So September, he invited President Park Geun-hye from South Korea first in June 2013. That makes him, angry. And then in late September 2013, there was a massive purges known as Jang Song-tak, Kim Jong-un's uncle incident took place. And that time I was in China, and the many Chinese leadership, I knew, or I got rumor and then some reliable sources from Zhongnanhai, the main leadership area. They even expressed that very negative views, Kim Jong Un, saying this the once blood is on your hand, it's harder to wash off. So they knew that Kim Jong Un won't stop, executing, purging people, and it truly negative feeling among the Chinese leadership because he killed his uncle. The uncle is family member, so no one would think that even it's more likely against the Confucius ideas, right? It's been long, Korean Peninsula. The ideology has been long in Korean Peninsula for a long time. So they dislike Kim Jong Un from that kind of moment. But in July 2014, that's why Xi Jinping became the first Chinese leader in history to visit South Korea before visiting North Korea. And this was big frustration of Kim Jong Un, and he even insulted him in front of other North Korean officials. So he giving order all the North Korean government agency that reduce all the relationship with China, and even give us guidance that we need to develop a Southeast Asia and Russia business ties. But in reality, Kim Jong Un probably undermined the reliance in China, by North Korea's reliance on China, because he doesn't understand the business side, and then our dependency on China is much bigger than he thought. So later he decided that we have to gradually reduce Chinese reliance. So it's been a while, trying to make a deeper relationship with Russia. So yet there was not little, room for genuine collaboration between North Korea and Russia. Think about it, the commercial market was limited, and then Russia produced far more coal and other material than North Korea. So even military cooperation was minimal at the moment. But ongoing war in Ukraine has given Kim Jong Un an opportunity to deepen ties with Russia. So with Putin in the dire need for North Korea's weaponry, Kim Jong Un, has become more valuable, to him. So meanwhile, Kim Jong Un sees this a opportunity to secure Russian military technology and fulfill his own military ambitions like ICBM, SLBM development. I mean, the Russian leader and North Korean leader, making the two leaders' needs align perfectly. So for Russia, North Korea could potentially become its largest ammunition producer for the war, while providing a safe and controllable zone that Western countries cannot intervene in. It's a very safe route for Russia. And of course, Chinese leader Xi Jinping isn't exactly pleased with the deepened North Korea and Russia relationship, but he doesn't want them to collapse completely either. His goal of, unifying Taiwan by 2027, timed to coincide with the 100th anniversary of Chinese, Liberation Army Foundation. So President Xi would prefer that Russia and North Korea keep drawing America and then Westerners' attention elsewhere. So in a sense, these three countries have different agendas, but they see the current relationship as mutually beneficial. However, once these benefits are no longer aligned, their position could change. Yep.
Right. Well, very insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to pass it on to Carlotta.
Thank you so much, Sandra, and thank you, Hyun-seung. It has been incredibly interesting. It doesn't happen every day to be so lucky to ask these questions directly to someone. So I wanted to ask you something more related to the society, and this is something that I think it's harder for us as foreigners to understand, from the outside. My question is, have you seen any significant generational change in terms of how the young generations perceive the regime compared to how the old generations used to perceive it?
My short answer is yes, I do. Yeah, and there is a significant difference between the MZ generation and the older generation in North Korea. I would say first, the young generation has never experienced the benefits of the North Korean regime, unlike older generation. Before collapse of the Soviet Union in early 1990s, North Korea was able to maintain basic necessities like daily goods, food, electricity, and water. Despite of the tragic famine in mid 1990s, and when it's estimate the number like 3 million people were starved to death, the regime didn't collapse because this was mainly because the older generation believed that North Korean leadership would eventually save them, but it didn't. And they didn't know what steps, take to change the society. So although trust in the regime has significantly, collapsed even among older generation nowadays, the younger generation who have never experienced any benefit from the regime has no trust or loyalty to the regime. Second thing is, there's a stark difference in the amount of information available. Before the year 2000, external information entering North Korea was extremely limited, but now the flow of information is like 10 times and 20 times greater than it was back then. So it's not the exaggeration to say that almost every North Korean has watched South Korean drama and American movies. So going further, younger generation driven by curiosity about the outside world and risking hard punishment to circulate foreign information. So the younger generation has far more knowledge and access to information than the older generation. So I would say, the more they know, the stronger their desire for social change will come. And the third thing is the perception, like a perspective, have fundamentally shifted. The North Korea has always emphasized ideological loyalty to the leader in every aspect of life, and many older generation remain, trapped in the regime's ideology indoctrination and occupy key positions of power now. And the other people now who are in power now. But in contrast, the younger generation has no interest in ideology or loyalty to the leader. Instead, they prioritize making money and finding jobs that can get them around, abroad, like going out, focusing on personal survival and then pleasure. So they favor, they want to enjoy the life, and they want to be not to controlled by the society. They have more desire to be free, and such like occupations like trading, market distribution, and then importing, exporting resources and IT related work. All these jobs are young people are preferred, and then these jobs are more open to society and have opportunity to gather more information. So while looking at these three factors, it's clear that the younger generation will make it in significantly difficult for Kim Jong Un regime to maintain control. So I would say if they are become a power of North Korea, I would see the change. I would say there will be some change.
Thank you so much, Hyun-seung. Yeah, that's the question, because this is the generation that will be there, and the question is, will this sort of generational change lead to some form of insecurity for the North Korean regime? And that's the interesting question in the end. But thank you so much for answering that. And on to Skylor. Floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for the in-depth analysis. I think it's fascinating to hear from what actually goes on in there, and the people there. And I feel in the calculations of international, like national interests, the people, the welfare of individuals and people is often ignored. So my question would be, what do you think is the best way for the international community to support the North Korean people without strengthening its regime?
I think it's most important question among all questions today. I would say there are two main approaches to consider. First, we need to use every possible means to put information inside of North Korea. And the information should be objective and promote social development. And I think that would help them understand and realize their society and their living in North Korea. And this type of information could, include documentary like history, economics, welfare, technological development, and the news. So content that can broaden their perspective and bring them out of their isolation and darkness. The biggest challenge is the North Korean regime's extreme control of information technology and the severe punishment. Therefore, I would say international community should develop information technology that can circulate these. I would say they break those barriers and let North Korean people know that the free access to information is a universal human rights. So people in North Korea understand what information they need for survival and what information they should have for the societal development. So that kind of information we should develop, and then technology such as currently we are thinking that the Elon Musk Starlink internet access. So the problem was how we can avoid North Korea's catching the signal out of North Korean people's house. So I know it's not entirely impossible, but there will be we can give them more information through advanced technology. So, and the second thing I want to highlight is, of course, we have to discuss the issue of humanitarian aid. I believe that up until now, humanitarian assistance has mostly ended up supporting the regime rather than the people, with only minimal impact on the general population. So the regime has misused humanitarian aid, but I would also think that humanitarian organizations have been somewhat naive in their approach. either they underestimate regime or like the experience of dealing with such, hard, tough regime. So they need to be significant reform in the manual and evaluation method for international humanitarian aid to North Korea. So if aid is handled in the same way as it is for other developing countries, you cannot be successful in North Korea. So, some of the, examples I can think of right now is instead of providing food aid, and that can be like, used by North Korean regime as the strategic, material. But we can focus on the items like women's items and then children's supplies, and eventually we should build a kind of zone, like facility or zone that bring all of children or bring the woman to take their materials by themselves, not North Korean regime distribute them to them. So I would say we can develop several safe sets for how to developing the distribution method and how to the humanitarian aid would work. Yeah, these are the two recommendation I can provide right now.
Thank you for the insights. I definitely think that dictatorships would be very afraid of losing their monopoly over information, because people will then know, like you said, they will then know they're living in North Korea and they will know what's going on, and they will be incredibly afraid of that. And yeah, I think that's some very great insights. So I will now hand over to Carlotta for the wrap up.
Thank you so much again, Hyun-seung. I wish we could go on for another hour at least, asking you more questions, but it's a unique opportunity really to sit here with you and have your insights. So thank you first of all for accepting our invitation, and then for giving us the time and again your precious insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity, and it's my pleasure to talk with you guys, and I'm sure you'll be doing great work on China and North Korea.
I really hope we cross paths again in the future for some research,
Thank you.
some other activity. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.